Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Peace be upon you all. Assalamu alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to this new episode of the series, of the CILE series on Islam and biomedical ethics. We mentioned in the last two episodes the significance of integrating the biomedical context when we want to analyze the juristic discussions, Islamic juristic discussions on religio-ethical issues raised by organ transplantation. Today we will start focusing on the arguments. Those who said that organ transplantation is not permissible from an Islamic perspective. What were or what are their arguments? First of all, we need to say that the opponents of organ transplantation from an Islamic perspective had the strongest voice in the beginning of the discussion, in the 50s and the 60s, and we will explain when we highlight their arguments. We'll explain why. But by time this group was decreasing in number, the supporters or the advocates of this group were decreasing in number, and this decrease in number is highly linked to the biomedical improvements which improved the success rates of organ transplants, as we will explain later. What were the arguments of the opponents? First of all, there is a central concept in the Islamic legal and religio-ethical tradition, which is dignity of the human being. The dignity of the human being. In chapter number 17, the Quranic verse number 70, in Surah Al-Isra, God says, "And we have certainly honored the children of Adam. وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي Adam." Muslim religious scholars, especially in the modern period, on the basis of this Quranic passage, this Quranic verse, they said human beings are dignified just because they are human beings, not because anything extra, not because they are human beings and Muslims, or human beings and males, or human beings and females, etc. Just because they are human beings, notwithstanding their race, their ethnicity, their religion, their age, their sex, whatever, they are dignified. And this dignity means that the body of the human being is also dignified. And the dignity of the human being, of the human body, is not limited to the life of the person. It goes beyond the lifespan of the human being and extends also to the period after his or her death. So, human body has a dignity, and it must be respected. One of the signs of respecting human body is to maintain the bodily integrity of the human body. It should remain intact, whether during life or after death. Any mutilation of the human body is categorically prohibited from an Islamic perspective. And this doesn't matter if the person is living or the person is dead. It doesn't make any difference. Also, it doesn't make any difference if the person is Muslim or non-Muslim, or male or female, or child or old person, etc. The human body has a dignity. It must be respected. No mutilation at whatever time. And they quoted, in order to indicate that it doesn't matter if the person is living or not, they quoted the prophetic tradition, statement attributed to the Prophet of Islam, in which he says, breaking the bone of the dead is as forbidden, as sinful, as breaking the bones of the living. كسر عظم الميت ككسر عظم الحي. So mutilation of humans is not allowed. This is point one. point 2, human transplantation is an act of transgression against the integrity of human body that must be maintained from an Islamic perspective. So organ transplantation is an aggression on human body. You have to cut into the body. Saw this as mutilation. You cut into the body. You make transgression against the integrity of the human body that must remain intact from an Islamic perspective, and that's why it is prohibited from an Islamic perspective. This was, for instance, one of the main arguments used by Indian religious scholars like Muhammad Shafi, by some Saudi scholars like Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen. The second argument that used is the limited authority of the human body, the limited authority of the human being over his or her body. From an Islamic perspective, the owner with a capital O of the human body is God, is not the human being. So the human being when you do not own something, you cannot sell it, you cannot donate it. I can donate, I can sell what I possess, what I own. Body is not mine. Body belongs to God. So how come that one can say, you can take this from my body, you cannot take this from my body? You can mutilate my body, you cannot mutilate my body, etc. The limited authority over the human body was used mainly and most importantly by the Egyptian well-known religious scholar Sheikh Sha'rawi. For instance, it was also used by Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen, who said that those who inherit a dead person, they inherit his body or her body, but not his or her they inherit his or her money, but they don't inherit his or her body. So they cannot give their consent to donate the organs of their deceased father or mother, etc. It doesn't matter at all. Why? Because they don't inherit this. It is not in the possession of the human being when he is living, and it is also not in the possession of those who inherit him after his death. The third argument is the factor of uncertainty. And these opinions were expressed especially in the 50s and the 60s. We said that the success rate of organ transplants in the 50s and 60s, because the immunosuppressive drugs and anti-rejection drugs were not highly developed, the success rate was considerably low. And that's why religious scholars use this argument. They said that if we will go against the principle of bodily integrity, if we will go against the principle of the limited ownership of the human body over his or her body, in order to say that we want to achieve some benefits, then the question will be how certain that these benefits will be realized. We have no certainty whatsoever. People who received organ transplants suffered too much, most of them died, etc. So there is no certainty about a benefit to be realized which will drive us or encourage us to ignore or supersede the two principles of the limited authority of the human being over his or her body and over the bodily integrity, which in their mind organ transplantation goes against both of them. In the next episode we will speak about the counter arguments of the group of the proponents of organ transplantation. How did they counter argue these three arguments specifically? Till I see you in the next episode, I say assalamu alaikum and see you next time inshallah.